Eddie. Hello?
Hello, Eddie.
Yeah.
Oh, this is Andrew Ricks calling. I think you were expecting me to ring you. Adrian Crowsdale probably mentioned my name.
Yes, he did.
Now, did he tell you that I wanted to do a short interview with you?
Yes, he did. Now, here's my problem.
Yeah.
I'm here having some tea and a conversation.
Oh, right.
If you can call back, what time is it now?
10 o'clock.
10?
Yeah.
What's the possibility of me calling back around noon? Would that throw you off?
No, what about 12:30 or later?
I may have to leave a little shortly after noon. But, okay. I'll try to fix it 12:30. I'll wait for your call.
Well, I'll call you about 12, whenever you want, really. It's up to you, if you just say.
If you can do it at 12, that'll be good.
Okay then, Eddie.
All right.
I'll speak to you later. Bye. Hello?
Hello?
Who's that?
1 moment, please.
Right, thank you.
Hello?
Oh, is that Eddie?
Yeah.
Oh, it's Andrew again.
Hello, Andrew. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. I hope you can spare me just a little bit of your time.
No problem.
Now, as you know, because you obviously you've spoken to Adrian Crowsdale, that in England you're sort of like a cult figure.
No kidding.
Well, you are, obviously.
Okay.
You know, within British sort of rare soul circles, your name is, I suppose the word, if I can use it, is revered.
That's wonderful to know, and I appreciate it.
Obviously, because of your work with Shrine Records more than anything else.
Yes.
And I believe that you've probably seen the piece that Derek Pearson and I did on you.
I did, and I want to compliment you. You know, your perceptions were very close, if not necessarily accurate, but.
Well, I mean, we were working on pure supposition most of the time.
It was amazing. You were amazingly close.
Yeah. And obviously the actual discography of the label, which was nowhere near complete, took us 2 or 3 years to even get to that sort of stage, because the stuff that you did was so obscure and the records are so rare.
Well,
that,
God bless you.
So, do you mind just answering a few questions for me? Because obviously I'd like to write the interview up for a British magazine, and Adrian would use information for the liner notes for the albums when they put them out.
Okay.
So I've got some already prepared. The first thing I'd like to know really is sort of where were you born, and
I was born in a city called Neptune, New Jersey.
Right.
Which is the address of the hospital.
Yeah.
But it is the hospital that serviced Asbury Park. I'm from Asbury Park. I'm from Bruce Springsteen country now.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So, what got you into the musical business in the first place then?
Well, my mother was a gospel singer.
Yeah.
And there was always a piano around the house.
Right. It's a sort of classic story, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I never really, as a child, I will say one thing, I always enjoyed music. I always listened to all music.
Yeah.
There was a very popular radio broadcast in my childhood called Martin Block's Make-Believe Ballroom.
Yeah.
And the Make-Believe Ballroom was like the top of the pops in a way.
Yeah.
It played all of the popular music of that era, which was mostly big band stuff, the bit of holiday stuff, the Dinah Washington as she came along, and
yeah.
Louis Jordan, and, you know, the real vintage performers, Harry Page, you know, Sinatra, Damone, all these people. And I sort of just grew up with the radio constantly on. The radio was never off.
Yeah. Did you ever do any singing yourself? Because I'm not aware of any
I did.
things that you've recorded on yourself.
I did. I recorded, the first record ever released on me was on Brunswick Records.
Right.
And the name of the group was Eddie Singleton and the Chromatics.
Okay.
And we had one release, a song called It's Much Too Late.
Right, yeah. I'll have to see if I can research on that one then, see if I can do a bit of chasing up.
Next recording released on me was a thing called Let Me Know.
Yeah.
On Old Town Records for High Weiss.
Okay, right. That's the company out of New York, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's where I began my career, was in New York City.
Yeah.
Which was only an hour's drive from my hometown of Asbury Park, New Jersey.
So what sort of period was that? Was that early 60s?
Late
50s?
Late 50s.
Late 50s.
And early 60s, yeah. I arrived in New York in 56.
Yeah.
And I arrived on Broadway around 1959, 58, 59.
Right. Right. The first sort of
photograph with me
yeah.
that I found coming through New York a few months ago at my godfather's home.
Yeah.
Of one of the lobby shots I was taking when I was just a young lad of about 20. And might be good for your article if you could have it. I was going to have it reproduced. It's an old photo.
Yeah.
8 by 10.
Oh, right.
And I had intention of finding a place while I was here, but I got so busy I didn't get around to it.
No. Well, I mean, if you did get round to it, then perhaps, if you passed it on to Adrian when you saw him.
I'm going to come back through here. I'm leaving tomorrow for Frankfurt and I have to go into Paris.
Okay.
Well, on the 21st, which is next Sunday,
yeah.
I will come back around, I'll be back here at the hotel maybe around 2 o'clock and spending the night and leaving for New York about Monday morning of next week.
Yeah. I just missed you, actually, when you were here in February with your wife.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was supposed to go to see Sharon Davis that morning.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't phone her in time, and of course she'd left at the airport to pick you up.
Sharon was by last night.
Yeah, and I didn't realise at the time that you were married to Barbara Randolph, because you know, I said to Sharon, it would really have been nice to meet Barbara, but the person that I really want to meet, the person that I'd love to meet is Eddie Singleton. And she said, oh, well, that's Barbara's husband. And I said, what? I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, we've been together since 1970.
Yeah.
There was one other record that I did, and I released it on a little private label of my own. That was my favorite performance on myself. It was the God Bless the Child, the old Billy Day.
Oh, right.
Day song.
Yeah.
That was on a little label that I did called Joker Records.
That's not the West Coast label, is it? There was a record label called Joker that was used by Connie Clark and people like that out of Los Angeles. No, totally separate label.
No, this was in New York.
Right.
A little private label that I threw together just for that one release.
Okay.
Beyond that, I decided very early that I found more pleasure in being the power behind the scene.
Yeah.
I found that as I was performing for live audiences that for the most part I was an introvert.
Okay. That surprises me, really.
Well, introvert to the point where I figured there was more reward for me for helping stars, finding people that I thought that had a talent, being able to foster that talent. So I made that my life's work rather than being the guy.
So, when did you go to Motown at all? Because I presume that's where you obviously met Ray Noma.
No, I met Ray Noma when she opened the Jobet office in New York.
Okay.
She came to New York after she and Barry divorced and whatever.
Yeah.
She decided that she wanted to create some space between the two of them. And she and her brother, Stanley Osman, the S. Osman on the records.
Oh, right, Stanley, and he's...
That was Ray Noma's brother.
Yeah, and there was Michael and Alice as well, I think.
Yes. Mike is Stanley, actually.
It's the same bloke, is it?
Pardon?
The same chap, Michael and Stanley, the same person. So is Alice's sister?
Right.
Okay. Because I thought that probably with Stanley and Harry Bass and Dal Warren all having written quite a lot of things for Motown.
Well, the interesting part is that Dale Warren is the son of Ray's oldest sister. So
Ray Noma's
oldest sister, so Dale Warren is our nephew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. From just purely on supposition again, you see, I've got a Joe Beat catalogue, and I'd look through that.
Yeah.
and sort of found about 5 titles by yourself, which presumably were never recorded. Things like one track called "I've Got to Forget" that you wrote with a guy called Norbert Ducoto.
But that's Bert Dakota, yeah.
Yeah. "Little Bitty Baby Boy" that you wrote with Harry Bass. "She Wears a Wig and Walks with a Wiggle."
Yeah.
That you wrote with Dorothy Goodman.
Exactly.
Yeah. "A Couple by Yourself," "Spend a Little Time Until the Time Comes."
Yeah, "Spend a Little Time" was done by Barbara Lewis. It was her second recording.
Was it?
Second release after Hello Stranger.
And the last one was "The Ape" by Billy Frazier, with you and Billy Frazier, and they're the only things that I can find in the Joe Beat catalogue by yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
But then loads of stuff by Dal Warren, Stanley Osman, my presumption was that you'd gone to Motown, you'd met Ray Noma there, and that's where you met all of these other people.
No.
And that's where the relationship sort of started, but obviously that's wrong.
It was the reverse. Actually,
reverse.
when Ray Noma came to New York and opened the Joe Beat office,
Yeah.
Norbert Dakota was my in-house arranger and copyist, and he went on to become very popular and very famous with the Sister Sledge, The Main Ingredient, and Marlena Shaw, and on and on and on. He wound up, Bert Dakota wound up with Columbia Records for a while.
So did you ever actually work at Motown in any capacity?
Yes, I did work at Motown. What happens is that after leaving Washington, D.C., at the Joe Beat, the period of those songs you're talking about, Dorothy Goodman was a writer on Broadway who had been writing with me several years.
Yeah.
That particular song we had intended for one of the artists at Motown. I'll go back a little bit and say that when Ray and Mike and Alice came to New York to open the first regional office of Motown, the first outpost was the Joe Beat Music office.
Right.
Brill Building.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine was Mel Williams, actually, who was married to Maxine Brown.
Okay. Is that the Mel Williams that recorded it?
No.
No, different guy.
He was not a performer, he was just a manager.
Right.
And he one day came by my office. I was in 1650 Broadway at the time. And my firm was Keith Records, which was distributed through London Records.
Keith
Records, and that's my first son.
Right.
And Kim Music was my publishing firm. That was first with BMI, and I left BMI organization as my performance society and went with CSAC.
Yeah.
And CSAC underwrote my activities for a few years. And during that period of time, Harry Bass, who was a teenage boy, leader of a group that I had called the Toreadors, and I changed the name to the Matadors, and they had a couple of releases through London Records.
Yeah.
And Dorothy Goodman was one of the writers who was involved with my company. Bert Dakota was my musical arranger and copyist, and he would make my lead sheets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And Billy Frazier was one of my artists that I was working with in my production company. And when Ray came to New York, I heard they were in town, so I stopped by the Brill Building one day and went up and said, "Hello, welcome to New York.
Yeah.
Is there anything I can do to help you learn your way around or whatever?
Right.
Feel free." And from that, we had a very casual professional relationship with my trying to help Detroit people find their way around the street in New York. And in the course of it, she told me of her divorce and involvement with Barry and her beginnings as co-founder of Motown, etc.
Yeah.
And the stories of discontent and the problems that she was having personally that drove her away from Detroit. She just wanted to get away from him.
Right.
And in the course of exchange and conversation, obviously a love affair began.
That's really nice.
Yeah, and before I knew it, there was Ray and Eddie, you know.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't. I met her in New York. I had no real knowledge of Barry even being married, to tell you the truth, at that time.
Right, yeah.
But, I knew and I knew his brother George, and
Yeah.
I knew his sister Gwen from coming into New York trying to promote the product, and I did certain things there because I appreciated their effort.
Yeah.
So that was my beginning into the Motown picture. A friendship turned into a romance, and we married and had a couple of children.
Yeah.
But no, that's the part in the shrine story that you did earlier.
We didn't know anything about that at all.
I understood, yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, the problematic aspect to it all was that even though I met Renoma 2.5 years after she had divorced Barry,
Yeah.
he didn't particularly like the fact that she would become involved with another record industry personality.
Yeah, I could imagine he was a very sort of possessive man, very defensive man.
He really was. I mean,
Yeah,
it has never ended, this vendetta or whatever
Yeah.
position he took against her. And it affected me because, first of all, I couldn't believe that he could be so obsessed in creating turmoil.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, whilst you were, did you say you spent some time in Detroit, or never?
Yes, I did. What happened in 1968, in leaving Washington, I left New York in 1963.
Yeah.
And because there had been a major problem with Barry and Ray
Yeah.
that snarled me into the trap, and this became very uncomfortable. I decided I no longer wanted to stay in New York,
Right.
and I looked at the map one day and I decided that I had spent quite a bit of time promoting my own product because I always did that as a producer.
Yeah.
And so I would go down to the Baltimore, Washington area and the East Coast of the United States to get test markets reacting and responding to my various productions through the years. So I knew a lot of people in the industry in the Washington area, so I decided there had never really been a label of any consequence in Washington before me.
No, I don't think there's anything of any note from Washington really.
That was my decision. I said, well, Ray, we'll go to Washington, and there's a lot of talented people in that area, and maybe we'll just try to work from there.
Yeah. Were you doing other things at the time then? Because the only sort of records that we know of really are things like you cut a track with Juno Parks on Crazy Horse, I believe.
I did that in Detroit. That was after I went to Detroit.
That was after '68.
Yeah, I'm trying to put together the chronological order of what took place.
Yeah.
So what happened? I left CSAC and went back to BMI,
Yeah.
and I went over and had a meeting with Theodora Zavin, who was, I guess, probably the writer relations person at BMI. I explained to her
Yeah.
my idea of moving into Washington and starting a music company.
So that would be Ramitary Music.
Yes, Ramitary Music was the aggregation of Ray, Mike, and my last name is actually Singletary.
Is it really?
Yeah, so we took RAMITARY.
Yeah. Oh,
That
right.
Ramitary Music. So it was owned and operated by Ray, Mike, and Eddie, myself.
Yeah.
So that's how that name came about. But what happened, I had done many things on Broadway as a young man.
Yes.
I never seeked too much publicity. At that time, we really didn't put our names, and credits weren't. Hello?
Hello, still there?
Yeah, credits weren't as important in that era.
Yes.
No one was conscious of the need for track records, or if many might have been, I was not at all.
Yeah.
I always enjoyed low visibility. I didn't really want to be necessarily known as a superstar, even as a writer-producer. It was the work that I loved to do. I liked to make the money.
Yeah.
I didn't really like to be harassed in the streets
Okay.
by aspiring talent. You know.
Yeah.
So I never
right, yeah, as long as they were happy.
Yeah, I produced Tommy Knight.
Oh, what, Don't Bring Back Memories?
Yes, for Atco Records.
Okay.
One of the artists in my stable. I had a little girl group called the Foxes.
Yeah.
That did Tiptoe Through the Tulips on ABC Paramount Records.
Right. The Tommy Knight thing I don't believe was ever issued, was it?
No, it was not.
No, I know that a friend of mine in London has the actual studio acetate of that.
Oh, yeah?
Ian Clark has that.
It must have come out of A1 Studios, I think.
He's only had it about 2.5 years. Somebody sent it to him, one of his sort of contacts in
There's one release on Tommy Knight that was released.
stuff on Atco, didn't he?
Atco, and it was called It's Real.
Yeah.
And I produced all of those.
Oh, right. Because I think that the Tommy Knight track is excellent. I mean, it's a far superior version to the Four Tops.
Yes. What happens is that when I gave the song to Harvey and Johnny Bristow for the Four Tops,
yeah,
they decided to edit the structure and rearrange certain parts of it.
It's more funkier, isn't it? I suppose, if that's the word. It's more...
Well, in my first listening, I was very disappointed because they had lost a lot of the melodic aspects of the song and the mood of the lyrics.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
And what happens is that when I placed the song with them, or the Four Tops, because of all the underlying turbulence with Barry, I put it in Ray's name.
Yeah, it's credited to Ray Nomer, isn't it?
To be released, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why her name is on there, but actually that was something that she and I decided might be a better approach. Simply because Don't Bring Back Memories with Barbara Lewis, the week it was released, it came in the second week at number 73 with a bullet on the charts.
Yeah.
And I actually wrote that song for Mary Wells.
Right.
That was the period when Mary left Motown.
Yeah.
And Mickey Stevenson had come to New York and he heard the song. He said, I want to do Mary on the song.
Would she have been at 20th Century then? Is that?
Yeah, that was during the transition period.
Oh, okay.
20th Century deal had not been cut yet.
Yeah.
But Mickey had been in the process of doing an album on Mary, and he loved the song. He wanted it to be her next release. And he took it back, and when Barry discovered that the song was written by myself, he told Mickey he didn't want it on the label.
Right.
So Ollie McLaughlin had come through town.
Yeah.
And he was looking for material for Barbara Lewis's second release. And Mickey Stevenson said, I picked up this song from Eddie Singleton, I think it's a smash.
Yeah.
And Ollie called me, and I allowed them. I cut the tracks myself. The tracks on the Barbara Lewis record was the tracks that I had done for demo in New York, and Ollie loved the feel of it. So he just put Barbara Lewis's voice on it.
Right.
And it came in on the charts at number 73 with a bullet, and Barry saw it. And from what I hear, he called Atlantic Records and asked them to cease and desist from pushing it.
Oh.
But it dropped off. The first week it was released, it came on at number 73 with a bullet. It would have been bigger than Hello Stranger.
Yeah.
But because of the underlying turbulence, and at that point I became aware that there was a bitterness. His bitterness with Ray Pollard had spilled over to me.
Yeah.
And so obviously that had a lot to do with my deciding to get out of business or move to another city, and screwed my head up, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. I can imagine it'd be very
frustrating. Matter of fact, that particular event changed the course of my life. No.
Right.
I couldn't fathom, I couldn't believe that this was really taking place. Because to that point I had never had any conversation, dialogue, or confrontation with Barry Gordy Jr.
Okay.
It was just the fact that I had taken his ex-wife as my lady.
Yeah.
And he didn't like that. People tried to tell me that he was fanatical, but I didn't feel that. I just thought it was rumored gossip trying to stir up problems.
Yeah.
But it was the truth. Man is incredible. He's a
So you went to Washington about, what, 63? 63.
You know, and BMI, to get back to that part,
yeah,
liked what I was doing, and they sponsored me. They gave me operating money for the first 6 months, I believe, to establish my offices. I took a brownstone building at Thomas Circle in Washington, D.C.
There was a 4-story townhouse or something, wasn't it?
Townhouse, yeah.
Yeah, I think Eddie Day
yes.
mentioned that.
Yeah, and very soon we were besieged with talent from all over the area coming, looking for a chance at stardom.
So how did you pick on the name Shrine? What?
Because I was a very staunch admirer of John F. Kennedy.
Yes.
And one day in my office, as I was deciding a name for the label, I sketched subconsciously the logo, which was actually my sketch version of the Eternal Flame on John Kennedy's gravesite.
Okay.
And the label was dedicated as a shrine to John F. Kennedy by Eddie Singleton.
Right.
That's why I gave it that name.
That's good. The one thing that Eddie, I'll bring the Eddie Day thing in because a friend of mine bumped into him in Washington last year.
Oh yeah.
A record collector in England called Rob Wigley, and Eddie Day seemed to infer, I think is the word I'll use, that you were actually trying to set up a Motown rival in the form of Shrine. I mean, do you think that there's any truth in that, or?
Not really. I mean, I think that was a normal assumption based on Ray's background, but I had been very actively producing and involved in the record industry for many years prior to meeting Ray.
Yeah.
So it was just a continuation of my work in another location. The fact that we recorded music that was rhythm and blues or whatever, I had been doing it long before there was a Motown.
Yeah.
So I didn't really, it was not really our intention to rival anyone. I just felt we all had a right to exist.
That's true. That's true. One thing that's always intrigued us, I mean, obviously the label had at least 18 releases.
Right, please, that's alright. But at least it'll finish the job off right down to the bottom, won't it?
Just a minute.
Hello?
It's alright, it's just my children downstairs.
Okay.
Right.
So what happens is that the 18 releases
Yes.
was because what I had learned and experienced in the record industry, in order to really impact the industry, one had to have the ability to have a continuity of product.
Okay.
And there was another label beginning to start at our same time called Jet Set Records.
Oh yeah, Jet Set.
It was owned by Dimitri Pollard and a group of his buddies out of Harvard University.
Yes.
Christopher Surf and Blair Butterfield or whatever.
Now, I know there's a record by Jimmy Armstrong on Jet Set.
I produced that.
I Won't Believe It.
Yeah, I wrote that song. I won't believe it till I see it.
Yeah.
I produced it.
Yeah.
What happens, Dimitri and his fellows came by my building one afternoon because they had gotten wind that I was in town.
Yeah.
And it was a very touching day because they walked in and said, hello, welcome to Washington, etc. I hear you're going to be our rival.
All right.
And so are we going to be competitors or are we going to be complementary to one another?
Yeah.
We like your music, we like what you do, how would you like to be a part of Jet Set? I said, well, I will do anything I can to help further music in Washington, D.C.
Right.
So I will give you every assistance I can in whatever areas that I can be helpful.
Yeah, because Dan Warren did some production for Jet Set as well, didn't he?
Well, everything that he did was attached to me.
Right.
Because that was the deal we struck.
Yeah.
And I would help them in their effort, and they became very helpful to me because they put an investment group together
Yeah.
with me on my behalf that gave me a little more longevity there.
Yeah.
It was an investment group out of Wall Street that heard some of the music. They came down and saw the operation and met some of the talent.
Okay.
And asked me my financial position, and I told them, well, I'm eking out whatever I can. So consequently, they put gave me the ability to go as far as we got. On the other hand, the stress of the personal involvement with varying Ray and myself, this triangular thing that developed, I became very ill, physically.
Yeah.
And the grind of this crash production schedule and mastering, and I pressed up all of those records just about at the same time, in the same time frame, I'd say over 90 days or so.
Yeah.
And then I started sending out samples of the product, and the promo label that you had in the article was the first.
Yeah, the Leroy Taylor thing.
Yeah, then I it was after I released Taking My Time that I sketched that Eternal Flame and had an artist do a little sophistication to it.
Right.
It became the logo symbol of Shrine Records.
So when did you start issuing things? Would it have been about 64?
Yeah.
And how long did the label run for? Or I've got the impression now that you recorded all of the stuff sort of in a batch and then issued it over a period of time.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, okay.
The label ran for maybe about 18 months.
Right, that's sort of the sort of time period that we thought.
Yeah.
Because the only clue we had was the date scratched in the track of the cautions.
Right. So what happens is that my physician at that time cautioned me that my health was in such a state that I could go on and continue at the pace I was living my life.
Yeah.
And be the richest man in the graveyard.
Right.
Or I could give more importance to life itself.
Yeah.
And less involvement with my work. So consequently, the opposition that was beginning to take place to covert activities of Motown came to my attention, and it just became so much of a struggle. And in my health, I decided to close the label.
Right, because Eddie Day seemed to say that sort of one day the business was running along, and then just suddenly it seemed to close.
We were out of money, and I was out of energy.
Right. That's two good reasons, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. And the bottom line, the other part of the first article was that Ray Noma had no money coming out of Detroit.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, when we got together, Rangers, Sonny, trying to think of Sonny's last name.
Not Sonny Sanders, no.
Her nephew, Dale Warren.
Yeah.
And the Paul Risers and all of the young kids around New York.
Yeah.
Detroit, rather. She screened them and analyzed what she felt was their potential talent as arrangers, and taught them her concept of theory and voicing and rhythm, so that they would retain a oneness in terms of a feeling.
Yeah. I mean, I think all of the things that have been written about Motown always indicate that Berry Gordy was the man who did it all.
That is the big lie.
You know, give no credit to anybody else.
That was the big lie.
Yeah, I mean, people like Johnny May Matthews, I think, had an influence there as well that's never been acknowledged.
What I'm saying is that no one had an influence stronger than Renoma.
Yeah.
Because she was the musical part.
Right, and he was the sort of business head.
He was a lyric writer, and he was a songwriter.
Yeah.
But theory and arranging and the whole concept of the background voices, all of those things were directly the result of Renoma being alive. Without her being alive, the world would not know a Motown sound. Okay?
Yeah, that's great. So, if we just pop back to Shrine.
Yeah.
Right. Is there any reason why you used two different numbering systems? Was there a break in the label, or because you started off with the 010 series and then just went to the 10 series? Is there any reason for that?
There was no actual reason.
It was just one of those things.
It was my mentality at the time.
Right, okay. We've always been very interested in the artist. Now, was Leroy Taylor the guy that went to Brunswick, recorded O Linda at Brunswick?
Yeah.
He was. And Ray Pollard, did you know him from being in New York? Because he recorded the United Artists.
I knew Ray Pollard from New York. He was the lead singer of a group called The Wanderers.
Yeah, I mean, Ray Pollard is another character like yourself who has cult status in England.
Yeah.
And of course nobody knows where he is or anything.
I found a number on Ray Pollard, and it's at my home. Someone gave it to me not too long ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and what happens is that I had always always admired, and his voice. It was a very unique voice, tenor voice, and the Moments, not the Moments, but the Wanderers as a group had risen to quite a bit of popularity in New York, working the cabaret circuit, and many appearances on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Right.
Ray Pollard lost one of his arms in the Korean War, and so that was another aspect of my affinity for Ray Pollard.
Yeah.
And I invited him to come to Washington, since he called me and said he was thinking about trying to do something as a single, since the group couldn't hold together.
Yeah. And did you just cut that one track on him this time?
I cut This Time and No More Like Me.
That's right. I mean, because it's got to rate as one of the best things that's ever been put on vinyl, and that's the opinion of sort of hundreds of people throughout Britain.
Which one?
This Time.
This Time?
Yeah.
Well, that's nice.
Amazing record.
Yeah.
So it brings together so many elements, the sort of doo-wop element and the driving beat, and just Ray Pollard as a singer is a brilliant singer.
I think in my recollection it was probably the most exhilarating mix that I ever did. I got very emotional. I remember having been moved to tears with the excitement, because I was very much behind Ray Pollard, and I wanted the world to really experience this great talent.
Yeah.
So I put a lot of energy, a lot of love, a lot of special care in his product. And probably one of my biggest regrets in life is that he got involved in politics with Barry, Ray, and myself.
Yeah.
And as a result, he didn't go anywhere.
He didn't make it. It's a tragedy, really, because a man like that, with a voice like that, deserved recognition. Do you know what I mean?
He was an evergreen. He could have lasted forever.
Yeah. I mean, he
I put him in a league with Johnny Mathis or Nat Cole, or the voices of our time. Ray Pollard was surely one of those.
That's right. I mean, it'd be nice to try and track him down and speak to him.
I will arrange that, because I do have a way to reach him. I was just talking to someone a month or so ago.
Yeah.
Buddy Scott, actually, and he said, guess who I ran into? Who called me? Because Buddy's now working with a booking agency.
Yeah.
I said, who? He says, Ray Pollard. I said, my God, where's Ray Pollard? He says, I got a phone number on him.
Oh, that's amazing.
He gave it to me, and I went home that evening. I think I tried to call. The line was busy, and I got off into something else and never replaced the call. But I do intend to call him. I'm going into New York when I leave here, and I intend to just go and take him to dinner and just say, how are you? I still love you,
Yeah, I mean, it's very important to us, because as sort of soul collectors in England, we buy these records and dance to these records and know these names, and I think to actually be able to say somebody, we
Andrew, let me ask you a question. How many people would you feel identifiably are into the shrine music situation?
I think because it's been such a long-lasting thing in England. I mean, Ian Levine first picked up on the label in about '75.
Ian Levine?
Yeah, he was the first person that I know that actually sort of brought to the attention of the soul people in England a shrine record.
That is interesting.
Which was the DC Blossoms.
That's right. You know what's interesting about that?
What?
Ian has never let me know that he really understood that.
He's probably forgotten, I should think. Eddie, it's a long time ago now.
That's incredible. Okay.
And Ian Levine had so many records passing through his hands at the time.
No doubt about it. Yeah.
I mean, there must be thousands. Every sort of.
I was wondering if I should put together a review of those people and come and do a mini tour of England.
Well, we had.
It'd be worthwhile.
Yeah, we had Eddie Parker and Lorraine Chandler come over. And we had some of the old Riptych artists, Al Kent and Pat Lewis. They came over and went down an absolute storm. Really, really did. And Popcorn Wiley came.
Yeah.
And those people really, really enjoyed themselves. I mean, I don't think the audiences were massive, but the actual, I don't know, just the feeling that there was recognition outside of the local area.
Well, what I was thinking, God is in control of everything. We never know what's coming next. And because of all of this stimulation, this personal stimulation I'm receiving, talking with you and experiencing what has come to my attention over the last couple of years, let me say one thing to you that is totally ironic.
Yeah.
My son, Eddie Jr., the son that Ray and I had,
Yeah.
is now the administrative assistant to the vice president of A&R for black music at Warner Brothers, Benny Medina.
Oh, right.
And it was last August, I remember very clearly, Eddie called home one day and told Barbara, asked Barbara if I was there. She said, no, he'll be back shortly. He said, well, Barbara, have him call me as soon as he gets back. And
Yeah.
I got in. She said, Eddie called, very excited about something. So I called the office. He said, Dad, listen to this. And he read me an article in Echo magazine.
Yeah.
Just a little small quip sort of article. That was July 16th issue of Echo magazine.
Yeah.
And it said that, I have a copy, I'm just trying to quote it. It says, there has been an upsurge of interest in the work of Eddie Singleton,
Yeah.
the Shrine logo, and it went on, a very nice article. And that was my first knowledge
Really?
of this whole Shrine thing happening over here.
Yeah.
And ironically, he says, is that you, Dad? And I said, I guess so. Didn't you see your mother's name mentioned, Miss Ray?
Hmm.
He said, yeah, he said, I thought so. He said, my God, Dad, you're big news in England. And I said, Eddie, that's beautiful. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Can I, just 1 second, I'm just going to flip this tape over, Eddie.
Right.
Yeah, as I was going to say, sort of within collecting circles, in the early 70s, the big names were like Riptych, Golden World, those Detroit labels. But I think in the last 10 years that the Shrine label is the most wanted, most revered, most respected sort of label ever to come out of the States for English collectors. And that's without a doubt.
That's wonderful to know. What I would like to tell you is that I'm sure you're aware that I've made a deal with
Adrian. Yeah.
And we're going to do a compilation of a lot of that stuff.
That's right.
Even some unreleased product.
Yeah.
That he came to the States and we went through it. And as a result of that, now I'm somewhat toying with the idea of going into Washington and seeing how many of the people I can locate.
Right.
Just to give them some sense of reward for all it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, isn't it?
Yes, it really is. I might put together a little review and bring them over here, if even just for one night.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it would do really well. There are just a few more specific things I wanted to ask you, Eddie. When the early releases on Shrine, or what seemed to be the first releases, were mainly you and Ray Noma in writing and production. And then, as time goes on, if you look through the discography, you seem to bring in people like Dale Warren and Harry Bass and...
Well, Dale called us.
Carl Kidd. Yeah.
After the Barbara Lewis thing sort of petered out, Dale arranged Hello Stranger.
Yeah.
And he worked with Ollie McLaughlin on Dionne Jackson's records, Love Makes the World Go Round, etc.
Yeah.
And things got slow for Dale, and he called and says, I want to come down there. So we said, come on. He brought his wife, kid, whatever.
Yeah.
And we just incorporated him into what we were doing. My intention of Shrine Records, or moving to Washington, was to continue my work, as I said, and on Broadway. What I did, I opened the door and fostered the talent of people I thought had what it took to be important in the record business.
Okay.
New York. So when I got to Washington, it was with the sole intent of doing exactly the same thing. Harry Bass, like I said, had been with me since the age of 14. He was like my little Smokey in a sense.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So he and the entire group, the Matadors, they all moved to Washington. And what I did, or soon afterwards, and Carl Kidd, who is Max Kidd today, with the Go-Go record stuff out of Washington.
Which record, sorry?
Go-Go records. He has a little concept of music that he's been pushing very heavily over here.
Yeah.
Well, he had a deal with Virgin Records. His name is Max Kidd today.
Okay, and there was Rudy Lewis as well.
Kenny St. Louis.
Kenny St. Louis.
Yeah, it was Kenny Lewis then, and then later on he changed his name to St. Louis.
Yeah.
And he became very famous for the work he did with Freddie Perrin, Freddie Perrin was a student at Howard University.
Yeah.
And I retained he and Alphonse Mizell to do lead sheets for the Ramatari music.
Yeah.
That was his introduction into record business.
Okay.
Kenny St. Louis moved to California and found me in the 70s, early 70s.
Yeah.
And the manager of the Silvers,
yeah,
Al Ross, was a friend, and he told me that he had just signed a deal with Capitol, but he needed a producer and needed some material, and I suggested Freddie Perrin as a producer, and Kenny St. Louis, I told him to get in touch with Freddie because there was something coming up with the Silvers.
Right. I knew I'd seen the name somewhere, actually.
So Hotline and all of the Silvers was a result of that marriage between Freddie and Kenny Lewis.
Right.
In St. Louis. Max Kidd remained in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And like I say, he continued on his little production efforts. Up until that time, they were all teenagers or very young adults who just came to the building looking for a chance in life.
I think Dal Warren went on to Stax, didn't he, for a while?
Yeah, when I closed Shrine, Al Bell had been very supportive. He loved the music of Shrine.
Really?
And he was a program director at WUST in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
So he did everything he could in keeping our airplay and things in the forefront, and we became a very significant force of inspiration for the entire community.
Right.
He said it was a place to go at last, you know. And when I closed Shrine, Al had just left the station and went down to begin his work with Jim Stewart.
Yeah.
And he told me he was going and asked me if I wanted to be a part, and I did not want to really be a part of that operation. At that time, I was still trying to make Shrine happen.
Yeah.
In the interim, Al became aware of Dale, my nephew.
Yeah.
Appreciated his work, and Dale told me, he says, Al wants me to come down to Memphis. What do you think? I said, hurry up and get down here.
Right. The one thing that we can't understand, Eddie, is why the record's so rare. I mean, we just don't. There's one copy of J.D. Bryant in England, one copy of the Kairos.
What happened in reality is that the trauma that I personally experienced, and Ray along with me, and when the doctors told me to quit for fear of my life, I left Washington, D.C. soon afterwards, and that's when I went to Detroit.
Right.
The request of Barry's sisters and Ray and whatever. Barry was no longer visible at the company.
Yeah.
So in reality, there was no one watching the store.
Okay.
And Ray and I felt, along with his sister Gwen, that if we came to the company and tried to mend the problems existing personally between Ray and Barry, that we could be a contribution to, as Ray being back as a symbol for the artist, and that my knowledge of the industry could help further Motown and bring it more into the mainstream.
Yeah.
And very idealistically, I accepted the opportunity because I felt, well, at least this will give me a chance to develop a relationship with Barry so he can relax and realize that I'm not a monster guy. But regardless of what we thought would happen, it didn't.
Okay.
Once I got there, I was abused by Barry in many ways.
Yeah.
And not overtly, but very covertly.
Yeah.
Became a thing of intrigue to him to create all kinds of unrest and discontent between Ray and I.
Right.
So, I mean, the leaving of Washington, D.C., I think I left some stock in the basement of the house that I had leased there.
Yeah.
Some stock was left in the basement of the building.
Yeah.
And some of the artists had taken home a box or two.
Right.
Or what was left. In my recollection, I think I only pressed 2,500 pieces.
Yeah. Well, of each record.
Record.
And didn't.
Because the intent, as you must now understand,
yes,
was to get enough activity going
Yeah.
locally,
Yeah.
and then to seek a national distribution major.
Right.
That was the game plan.
Yeah. So did you actually distribute the stuff locally in Washington?
Yes, in Washington, I bought a van or whatever, and we distributed ourselves to the mom and pop stores, and soon the major little record chains around the area. We had our direct accounts with them.
Yeah.
They paid us COD.
Okay.
And one day I got a call from Jim Schwartz.
Yeah.
He says, Eddie, you're missing so much of the market
Right.
that you really need to be with us. And Waxy Maxy had been very supportive of me,
Right.
my efforts, and
Because that place got burnt down, didn't it? In the
yeah, that's what I heard. But what happens is that I got a deal with Schwartz to take the product so that we might get more sales results in the area. And they paid me COD for my cost of pressing and just a little overhead expenses for every record they ordered. And things were set up properly, I would say.
Yeah.
And had I not been so besieged with the mental problems, the physical stress of being involved in this fight between the ex-wife and the ex-husband, I probably would have fared better in my overall health.
And then we wouldn't be paying hundreds of pounds for Shrine Records.
Exactly, you see. But as a result of all of those traumatic occurrences in my life, I walked away. I just totally...
And sort of left it.
I never wanted to look back because it was too painful.
Yeah, I can appreciate that.
So whatever happened with the distribution of the product that was left on the floor and whatever found its way to England and to Europe was quite phenomenal and totally without my knowledge. Yeah, so all of this is like newfound information for me.
So what, I mean, ideally what we'll have to do then is keep on searching around Washington to see if we can actually find any of the records.
Yeah, well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to give Harry Bass a call when I get back to the States.
Yeah.
Because I'm going in, and with my intent to go to New York, I may just go down to Baltimore, Washington.
Okay.
See who I can find, see just what exists in terms of photographs and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
I can only say it was a very irrational act on my part.
Well, I think you do what you feel you have to do at the time.
Exactly.
You know, and that's the way.
Whatever, and the new people would listen to the tapes they would find on the shelves.
Yeah.
And they would find something of interest, and consequently, over the course of a lifetime, I have found my works manufactured and distributed under all sorts of label identities. People have put their publishing companies on things that I wrote and produced, and to go back over it and try to do a big search and contain it all is something I just didn't want to deal with.
I think it'd be pretty impossible as well, wouldn't it?
Yes, that's what I'm saying, you know, so...
which studios did you use? Did you use the Edgewood Studios in Washington, or...?
Well, I was probably the first popular music producer to get involved. Edgewood Studios was listed in the telephone directory in Washington, D.C. as a recording studio. Owned and operated by Ed Green, who is now very popular in the audio-visual world. He does the sound for the Grammys and Asia music events throughout the world. Green and Crow audio company in California now. But Ed Green had a very small, not too sophisticated, state-of-the-art studio. That he used to record the Rose Garden speeches for the president.
Really?
Yeah, and things that were audio. He serviced the audio needs of the Washington, D.C. community. But very little music had he been involved in.
Right.
And I went in and we met and we struck it off, and he liked what I was proposing, and a partnership in essence began. Edgewood remained his, Shrine was mine. And we worked very closely hand in glove, and he gave me great rates. And there were times when he'd call and say, I need my mortgage money, or I need to pay my equipment lease, and I would advance him money. There were times when I needed to cut some product and I didn't have cash. He'd say, come on in. So we became very close. I love the man. My memory of the man is even as I talk about it. one day what happened, and the reason why the masters got back to me from Edgewood,
Yeah.
when he decided to move to California, he found me through a friend and called me in California to say, Eddie, I'm closing the studio, I sold it, whatever, I'm coming out your way.
Yeah.
But what do you want me to do with all these tapes from Shrine? I said, why don't you put them in a box and ship them out to me,
Yeah.
collect. And he did that. And I've carried, of all the work of my life, and this is the most interesting part of all,
Right.
I've carried those masters with me since 1969,
Yeah.
anywhere I moved or whatever.
Do you think it was a sort of fate
It was fate.
that one day?
It was absolutely and totally an act of God.
Yeah.
Because I am not a collector of my own work even.
Right.
I don't have a single that I've produced in my life.
I mean, we find that with a lot of people, Eddie, that we meet, that they just don't have any of their own.
I just keep on moving, you know. That was my nature. And as a result of that, when my son called me last year to tell me and read me the article of Echo, I went out into my garage
Yeah.
and looked at the tapes. And I said, well, this is actually, must be a manifestation of God himself. It's the only thing I have.
Well, I mean, we seem to think that some of the stuff when I first heard J.D. Bryant, I thought, you know, this record's come down from heaven because it's just so incredible. You know, the production on it and everything, the emotion in it, it's just, it's unbelievable, really.
That was my forte. I always believed in the sensitivity of man.
Yeah.
And the need to incorporate that into the music I made. So that was my gift. I never studied music formally.
Right.
And for years I didn't know E flat from F.
Yeah. So we seem to think that the only sort of biggest hit that you had was the Epsilons.
At the World?
Mad at the World, yeah, in Baltimore.
Yes.
And then you had you wrote and produced a thing called Mind in a Bind that came out on Hem Records.
Yeah.
I mean,
that again was, I don't want to use the word pirated.
Yeah.
All of those things was done without my knowledge or consent. They were just tapes that someone found.
Yeah, presumably from Edgewood, because I think the other, the Kashmirs recorded for Edgewood, Hem as well.
Yes, exactly.
Lawrence and the Arabians.
Yes, well, they were all a part of Shrine.
They were all, the Kashmirs as well?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I remembered the inspiration writing You Got My Mind in a Bind.
Yeah.
Was a part of the problems with Barry and Ray.
Right.
Ooh, child, you got my mind in the bind.
So, are you familiar with Showstopper and Don't Let the Door Hit You Back by the Kashmirs? The two things that came out on Hen.
Let the door hit you where God put you? Yeah, I wrote that.
Right.
Yeah. But I'm saying that these were just things that crumbs that people picked up after my leaving and just went on and did whatever they could with it.
Because you don't get any credits on that record.
Oh, no.
Well, you know, I mean, and from what you've said, that's quite understandable now.
Yeah. Because many of the people never knew on the boxes, many of the boxes, of course, in the libraries.
Yeah.
Companies that said it was Eddie Singleton who paid for it and produced it.
Yeah.
But they didn't know whether I wrote it or what. And that I can blame no one for. It was just a course of events in my life.
It goes, yeah.
And the fact that the public received the information in any way is still rewarding to me.
Yeah.
I have no bitterness about it.
Did you have any involvement in other labels like Cap City, or did you cut? Do you remember cutting a thing on the Cautions called "I Don't Want to Be a Fall Guy"?
I wrote that with Harry Bass, and I produced that.
Right, because Adrian found that in the Scepter Wand vaults.
Yes, that was. I became A&R director for Scepter Wand.
Really?
After what happens? There's a song by Jackie Wilson that I produced called "I Believe Our Love On."
Yeah.
Okay, and that original work was the voice of Jimmy Armstrong.
Right.
And I went to New York and I was talking to Jackie and Nat Tarnopole, and I played them some of the Shrine stuff.
Yeah.
And I was trying to get a release on Jimmy Armstrong saying "I Believe Our Love On." Jackie said, "Eddie, I want to do that myself."
Oh, right.
So I said, "Okay, fine." He said, "You got the track?" I said, "Yeah." So I flew down to Washington, got the tracks, and came back. I think the following week I took Jimmy's voice off.
Yeah.
Put Jackie Wilson's voice on. Now, among the stuff that Adrian got while in California is the original recording of Jimmy Armstrong singing that song.
Okay.
As a result of that event, I became the A&R director for Brunswick Records.
Right.
Carl Davis succeeded me.
Carl Davis.
Carl Davis.
Carl Davis, sorry, yeah.
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 As a matter of fact, the Soul of Go-Go session was a session that, not Soul of Go-Go, but Soul Galore
Yeah.
was a session that I arranged, and actually it was my letting Carl Davis come in and do some things, Peaches Baby and Soul Galore and whatever,
Yeah.
on Jackie Wilson to an album I was doing.
Yeah.
And I left because I had a very turbulent relationship with Nat Tarnopol, who was putting his name on the stuff that I produced. Because, like I said, I really wasn't conscious of caring about credits at that time in my life.
Yeah.
So Nat Tarnopol took a lot of credit for my work, and my name never showed up on these things. And some of them I showed up as the writer, of course, because I was the writer.
Yeah.
But in terms of the producer, I produced the entire Jackie Wilson catalog for, I guess it was 1964, 66.
Yeah.
And
So you were doing Brunswick and Shrine at the same time then?
exactly.
Oh, you must
Commuting. I was in New York from, I would leave my home in Washington on Tuesday morning, fly to New York, and I would leave New York on Thursday night, fly back to Washington.
Right.
And that was what ruined my health.
I think it did, yeah, it ruined mine as well. So
I was dealing with my Gordy problems and my Tarnopol problems, and then at a point in time, I went over to Scepter and had a meeting with Florence Greenberg.
yeah.
She said, why don't you come over here and take this over? Well, I did that, and I recorded Chuck Jackson and Shirelles and people there.
Right.
And that's why some of my tapes I left at the studio Scepter One.
Okay.
Yeah. So, again, after my leaving, people went through the tapes and started releasing and no one ever called me
No.
for permission or to say, we're going to do this, or how do we pay you. I didn't hear about it, I didn't care about it, and I was just going on to something else.
Because you did a record called The LaRue while you were at Brunswick.
Yeah, Later
Edmund Jr., The Girl in the Cage.
Yeah, Later Edmund Jr. was the go-go girl.
Yeah. Did you ever have any intention to put that out on Shrine, or was that a totally separate?
That was a totally separate deal. Actually, I produced that record for RCA under Ray Ellis, who was A&R director at that time.
Yeah.
And I think it might have been a test pressing or whatever.
Yeah.
Johnny Roberts took over the management of Later.
Yeah.
Johnny was like a close friend, confidant with Nat Tarnopol. And again, one day I discovered that they had acquired the master from RCA,
Right.
released it on Brunswick. That was something that happened between Johnny Roberts and Nat Tarnopol. I didn't have any.
Well, at least you got some label credits on that one.
I produced and wrote it.
Well, did you know that was reissued in England in about 1975?
No, I didn't, because I never saw a dime. I never saw
Yeah.
royalty. I never saw anything.
I don't think it did anything in the States, but I mean, it became so popular in the English clubs
I didn't know that.
that MCA put it out. It was like one of the most in-demand records in the country at one time. You know, among the soul people again.
Well, I think I'm going to have a long talk with Harry Fox.
Yeah.
And try to rebuild the history of earnings on all of this stuff.
Well, I mean, MCA put it out, British MCA, and it sold substantially well.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we're talking a few thousand copies.
Understand.
You know, I mean, and that's royalties, isn't it?
The money's money. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's Ramitera Music and Eddie and Ray on the label, so there must be some royalties somewhere along the line.
No doubt about it.
So, I mean, I think those things are worth.
I want to make a note of that. Soul of Go-Go. What year was it released here?
The LaRue.
LaRue, rather.
Oh, it's probably about 76, I should think.
The MCA England.
British MCA, yeah.
What happens is that LaRue was the flip side.
Yeah.
The side we were going for was Soul of Go-Go.
Yeah.
And I just decided to write LaRue as something to go on the other side. They created a whole dance craze for a minute.
Yeah, well, it did over here anyway. That was the thing.
Right.
Just one question somebody wanted me to ask you. This guy's been trying to locate a guy called Jack Montgomery. Have you ever heard of him?
I know of Jack, but I don't have any idea of his whereabouts.
Now, is he a real person as opposed to just somebody else using a pseudonym?
It was a pseudonym.
It was a pseudonym. Do you know for who?
No.
Oh, right. But you don't... because he recorded for Scepter. He had a single out on Scepter.
What was the title?
Do You Believe It?
Yeah.
That was out of Detroit, 'cause it was written by Don Mancher and...
Yeah, well, Don Mancher's a very close friend of mine.
Right, I mean, he's another very popular guy in England.
Don is? Don was at my house for dinner the night before I left.
Oh, really?
No, like he bought a tape. We did a tribute record the night after Marvin Gaye died.
Yeah.
Called Thank You for the Songs, Marvin, and I brought the master here to try to put a deal together.
Yeah.
Have it released. Plus he did another song recently in Detroit called The Spirit of Detroit, which is a real house music type of record.
Oh, right.
Don Mancher I executive produced for him.
So Jack, I can just go back to this friend and tell him Jack Montgomery's a pseudonym for somebody.
Yeah.
And then he'll have to try and work on it from then.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean that's interesting because of all of the people that we've spoken to, like Richard Popcorn Wiley and people like that, they just say I've never heard of him, don't know him.
What is the name of that song again?
One side's called Dearly Beloved, and the other side's called Do You Believe It, and that came out on Scepter. And then he had a couple of things out in Detroit. One on Barracuda called Don't Turn Your Back on Me, and then he had a single out on Review called Take a Chance on Me. And one other record, but I can't remember what it's called now. So,
A Chance on Me.
So I don't know. I mean, I'll leave it at that.
Dearly Beloved was on what label?
Scepter. Dearly Beloved.
Do you Don't Turn Your Back on Me?
Barracuda.
Barracuda.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that now. And Take a Chance on Me.
On Review.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be talking with Don. I may call him from over here.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Is there anything that I might find of interest about the artist? Linda and the Vistas, that's really not in keeping with the rest of your Shrine stuff, is it?
Linda and the Vistas.
Bad Apple's a real sort of hoedown.
Yep. Linda and the Vistas was recorded in New York.
Yeah.
And she was an artist that I'd worked with for years. A very beautiful girl. She was half Indian.
Yeah.
With a voice like a bird.
Really?
And I released a product after I went to Washington. I released it on Shrine.
Yeah.
I think I had put a deal together for Bad Apple before going to New York, and the deal went sour.
Yeah.
And I did another song. I think the other side of
She Went Away.
Went Away was a song I wrote the day that John Kennedy was killed.
Right.
Was crying. I sat to the piano and wrote He Went Away and Left Me Crying. Went Away and Left Me Blue. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was, I composed that one. Harry Bass and I think did the Bad Apple.
Yeah. What about the Cautions? Were they just a local group?
They were a local group out of Washington, D.C.
Yeah. And the Kairos?
The Kairos was a group that was involved Kenny St. Louis and Max Kidd, Carl Kidd.
Yeah.
They were group members in the Kairos.
Oh, really?
And the other fellow, his name was Wayman. I can't remember Wayman's last name.
Carl?
They had ended up Wayman.
Carl Wayman.
And what happened is that they had been doing background vocals for Billy Stewart on Sitting in the Park and all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the Kairos were doing background vocals?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's amazing. And then there's just these Bill Dennis. Who was Bill Dennis?
Just this fellow who walked in
fellow
one day, and I liked what he was about.
And Les Chansonettes. We know they had another release on Monca or Moncha, a Washington label, which was...
What was the name of that?
Oh, God, I can't remember. I've got it sitting in the cupboard over there, but I can't remember what it's called.
The Chansonettes were three young girls, high school age.
Yeah.
And we did Don't Let Him Hurt You Like He Hurt Me.
Yeah.
And we did Deeper.
That's right, which there's a cover version of that by Sandy Borden on Diplomacy.
Yeah, well, again, these were things that were just taken after I left.
Yeah, and also Rudy Lewis. No, let me get the name right. Yeah, Kenny Lewis, sorry, or is it Rudy Lewis? A group called the Rubies, who recorded for VJ, they cut that record as well deeper.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that got about a little bit.
Well, that was a Ramatory copyright.
Yeah. The Enjoyables, we think that the Enjoyables were the same group that recorded for Capitol. They did a thing called Push a Little Harder on Capitol. And vocally they sound the same, so we assume.
Yeah.
It's not the same.
It is the same.
It is the same group, yeah. Yeah.
I gave those groups that didn't have a name, I gave them a name.
Yeah.
You know? And I think the Enjoyables was one of those groups. There was very little work done with them. A lot of the recordings was an experimentation on my part to see how well they could come off on record.
Yeah.
So a lot of stuff was not released by me because I never really... And even though I didn't finish it after I left, people heard it and felt it was good enough and just went on to release a lot of this stuff. You see?
Yeah. So obviously, I mean, Adrian was saying something about this. From the masters that you've got, there's still quite a few things that were never issued.
Yeah, right. Because, I had done scratch vocals and what have you and had an intention of going in and completing the product.
But no, I think some of the beauty about the Shrine stuff is, I mean, the productions on some of the things are really over the top, like the Shirley Edwards and the Kairos, but also things like the Enjoyables is such a basic record, and it's almost empty in a way, but that's the appeal of it.
Well, the reason why it was empty, I would say that the Shirley Edwards stuff and the Kairos stuff and whatever, Stop Overlooking Me and those things were more or less where most of the product would have arrived in the overall aesthetic had I completed them.
Yeah.
But as I say, in leaving, a lot of the stuff was maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, 6 in terms of completion.
Right, but still they carried on. I mean,
because
the records were good. They're still good records.
The concept was always in my production that the basic rhythm track established the overall mood of the product.
Yeah.
So all of the real energy went into getting the basics done, and then we would sweeten, as the term goes.
Okay.
A lot of the basic stuff that you love would not have been as raw had I completed them. So thank God I never completed them.
I mean, they're good as they stand, but
yes, I understand. Well,
you see what I mean.
In today's record business, believe it or not, most of the product I hear reminds me of demos that I did in my career that just gave the basic outline of the song, the rhythms, the progressions. But most of it to me sounds like unfinished work. But it has become the taste of the public.
That's right. They don't want too much on top, do they?
Right, exactly. Which is probably good and maybe somewhat bad because the life is a tapestry. The emotions of the human being. There's some bitterness, there's some sweetness. There's some highs, there's some lows, and I believe in dynamic production.
Right. I mean, I think I've covered all of my questions, Eddie. Is there anything else that you wanted to say? Anything else you think I might?
I want to thank you. I want to thank Adrian. I want to thank all of the people in London who have responded and reacted to that work that was done with the utmost sincerity and desire to please the world.
Well, it's just it was like a major phenomenon. The Shrine thing to us is.
No one.
It's just an incredible.
One can understand or believe that better than I.
Yeah.
To me, that's my only description. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I thank God to have lived to see it happen. I would appreciate if you could make me a copy of this particular interview tape.
Yeah, I'll do that, no problem.
Personal need to maybe just hear it sometime.
Yeah. So I think Ray Pollard writing a book, isn't she, at the moment?
She's writing a book. It will be out in the late end of this year.
Yeah.
And it will set the record straight.
Right.
It's very difficult and hard for me emotionally to talk about it too much, but I think it's important for you, though, isn't it? Anything like that to get it out of your system. I think the world should understand that all that glitters isn't necessarily gold.
Aren't you worried in any respect that Barry, if Ray Pollard comes out with telling the truth, that Barry's going to start slapping libel actions on people?
No, because all she is going to tell is the truth. She's telling her life story.
Yeah.
And the fact that he married her, they started the company, and he took the company and all the money, and hated her for many a mention as having even ever been a part, is something that the world should know, whether Barry likes it or not. It was very wrong of him to have abused a human being in the way that she has been abused. And I think that every mother will buy a copy of Gray's book and give it to their daughter.
Right, yeah.
She might beware of what can happen when you lead with your heart.
Yeah.
Yourself exposed, and empires can be founded. You can be totally left out, left to starve. You know, and I think that that's a story that need be told. And as he has mentioned, of course, it is in the true aspect of what really happened and her perception of why it happened. That it's not any intent on her part to be libelous.
No, but I mean, you take my point, can't you? I would imagine that Barry would want to protect his reputation at all costs, if you see what I mean.
Oh, he's going to shit green peas.
Yeah, because he's sort of kept this front up for getting on for 30 years now.
Yeah.
I'm sure he won't like it.
And no one knows what the ramifications will be.
Well, that's right.
And right now, Ray doesn't even care.
Well, I think you've got to stand up and be counted, haven't you?
That's what it is. That's what it is. So,
you know.
Once again, let me give you my home address.
I've got it actually, Eddie. Let me just check with you. Let's have a look. 5080 Arundel Drive, Woodland Hills, California.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
You can close the article by saying, "Thank God for Barbara Randolph."
Right.
Because had it not been for her, for the course of my life and the troubles of my mind.
Where did you meet Barbara? Was that when you went? No, because she didn't start Motown long.
Believe it or not, on the trip that I came to California and faced the master with Geno Parks, Capitol Records, that began Crazy Horse.
Oh, right.
And that particular flight, the night I flew in, Gwen Fuqua, Barry's sister, and Anna Gay, and little Marvin were on the plane, and they said, "Where are you going?" I said, "To Hollywood." And they said, "So are we. Marvin's opening at the Coconut Grove tonight."
Yeah.
And they sequestered me. And I went over, and when we walked into the club, Barbara was doing a song. And I said, "Who in the hell is that?" They said, "That's Barbara Randolph. We just signed her to the company. She was in guests coming to dinner." And the people insisted that Marvin appear with the girl because he was booked on the strength of the successful records with Tammy Tyrell.
Yeah.
And as a result of her being incapacitated, Joe Glazer inserted Barbara with Larry Maxwell to that engagement with Marvin. And there was an after party from the opening night. It was Marvin's first major nightclub appearance in his life. And Barbara stole the reviews the next day in the papers.
Oh, right.
And I met her at the after party, said hello, and that was it, just a casual hello. And after Ray and I separated some years later, and I was still living in California, I ran into Barbara at a traffic light. Our cars were opposite, at my side. Said hello, and she remembered me, and I remembered her, and we went and had a drink at her home, apartment, and a romance began.
Oh, that's good.
And that was in 1970, and she has been by my side ever since.
And can she still sing?
My God, can she still sing?
Can she still sing?
It's re-recorded, I Got a Feeling for Ian Levine on
That's right, yeah. Ian phoned me up last night, actually.
It's the recording, and the B-side is very good also. And now she is stimulated because we have a 16-year-old son. She has had no desire to perform. And my wife and my backbone and support.
It's sort of all coming together. Do you know what I mean? It's amazing, really, the turn of events.
It really is. I intend to bring Barbara over in the month of August.
Yeah.
In fact, he may be helpful to me there.
Yeah.
She wants to do some track dates to get the feel of the public again. And decide if she really wants to start a career back up.
Okay.
So if you can think of any clubs here in England.
Well, I mean, Adrian's the sort of person to talk to on that.
Okay.
I mean, Adrian can always give me a ring, certainly.
Very good. Any input you provide there,
I'd
appreciate it.
Right.
I'm running my way around England.
Okay then, Eddie.
Thank you. you very much,
I think I really appreciate you taking your time, because I mean, ever since I first saw a Shrine record in your name, I thought I must find this guy. Do you know what I mean?
God bless
And
you.
like 10 years later, here we are, and it's like I don't know, it's just really nice. It's a real buzz for me to actually speak to you, and I've really enjoyed what you've had to say.
Made my day. Well, how do you spell your last name?
It's R-I-X.
R-I-X.
Yeah.
Rix.
Yeah.
And what is your mailing address?
It's 32 Tower Road, Tower, Boston, Lincolnshire, or you can just put Links, that's Lincs.
L-I-N-C-S. And Boston, is it?
Yeah, Boston, as in Massachusetts.
32 Tower Road,
Boston, Links.
And the
PE 21.
E21.
7A.
7A.
No. 9AD. 9AD.
Okay, give it to me again. EE21.
P as in Paul.
Oh, P.
PE 21. 9AD.
9AD.
And
your phone number?
Is 0205 352215.
0205
352215. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Okay then, Eddie, thanks ever so much for your time. Really is appreciated, and I'll get this article done up sometime. I'm just in the middle of doing a course actually. I'm living away from home most of the time.
Okay. What magazine do you have in mind?
Shades of Soul, I think.
Shades of Soul, what is it?
Shades of Soul, because that's where we ran the original Shrine listing and an article.
Oh, okay, very
It'd
good.
be really nice to
Shades of Soul.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously we'll keep in touch through Adrian. But I've got your address and things.
I appreciate any articles that you might uncover related to the Shrine or myself.
I'll pass on to you.
I would appreciate it.
Yeah, I will do.
Thank you so much.
Okay then, Eddie. Thanks ever so much.
Bye-bye.
And all the best. All right.
Okay,
Yeah. Cheers then.
thank you.
Bye.